Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni, the tail end of the program right now. World Bank warns that Ruto tax plans will disrupt business, is what we were focusing on as we were taking a short break briefly. And we want to circle back with you, Dr. McPhee. At least I interrupted you at some point before we took that particular. I hope you've not lost your track of thought.
No, but actually, let me just change a little bit because, you know, in one of the newspapers, I don't know which one it was, but I read it in the newspaper the other day. There's an organization which actually is exporting something from Kenya. Now, the normal thing all over the world is that exports are not taxed, because the moment you start start imposing taxes on your exports, you make them uncompetitive. In fact, at our meeting at the World Bank yesterday, in fact, there was a gentleman there, 70% of his produce used to be exported from Kenya. Now he exports nothing. And the point is that when you actually tax exports, you know, it means that, you know, you can no longer be competitive. And, you know, this is where, when you compare our situation to Uganda, Uganda is a very much more favorable business environment than here in Kenya. I was talking to a man who actually, well, he works for Brazzafrique. Okay, they sell Brazilian stuff, and they do a lot of selling of coffee machinery in Uganda. And he was telling us, well, you know, the Kenya government has actually bought 250 of these coffee pulpers. And he says, I don't know where they're going to go because, you know, the government doesn't do pulping of coffee in Kenya. But, you know, and this is a thing I'm being led away from. But now, the fourth largest investor in Uganda, after the Netherlands and after, you know, the US doesn't invest in Uganda because Uganda just said no LGBT. So US, oh no, you people are unbearable because you're not pro-LGBT. So, but anyway, the fourth largest investor in Uganda is Kenya, and the amount we in fact, foreign direct investment in Kenya is going down all the time. Okay, it used to be 480. It's you know, the numbers this year and last year are a little bit doubtful. I don't know what the numbers are. But anyway, the situation here is, if I'm in business in Kenya and I want to expand my business, the easiest thing to do is to set up another business, okay, the same business in Uganda. And that's why Kenya is one of the largest, you know, investors, foreign direct investment in Uganda. Now, this man who works in Brazzafrique, I said, well, you know, we didn't have a license to grow coffee in you know, last year. He said, what? You need a license to grow coffee in Kenya? He says, you know, look,
part of the reforms.
He knows a person who's just going into developing 400 acres of coffee. Uganda is now the fourth largest exporter of coffee in the world. We are number 19. And there's a James Murithi who works in Sokoni. He was in Boston at the beginning of last year, and someone said to him, look, if Kenya stops producing coffee, it'll have no effect on the world, you know, consumption at all. We produce 2%, sorry, not 2%, 0.2% of the world's coffee. So the point is, we're making it difficult to do business in Kenya, and taxes is one of them. There's an entity here which wants to export something, but the tax on the product is more than what they're actually going to get if they sell that outside of Kenya. Now that doesn't make sense. You know, the problem here is we're not thinking about Kenya. Which group of people at the top level are thinking about Kenya, or are they just thinking about how I can be richer than President Moi, Kenyatta family, etc., etc.? And you know, Wanjiru Gikonyo at the meeting of the World Bank yesterday, she brought up the fact of corruption, and so did Dr. Abraham Rugo. And this is a thing that, you see, we overlook all the time, because the amount of money, you see, we're paying more and more tax, but more and more of it is being stolen. I have a past student who stole 1 billion shillings from NHIF. 1 billion.
And he's not in jail?
And he's not in jail. In fact, he was brought out of jail because, you know, if you have a track record of being a crook, well, you probably will be made a CS. Ni kweli uongo?
All right. Let's talk about, just briefly before we go to these other stories, because especially on the motor valuation tax, the circulation tax on it as well, I can see Uber, Bolt warning that they're going to exit the country if the Treasury goes full steam ahead with its plans with this particular finance bill as it is. They say Bolt and Uber have warned they will be forced to close their operations in Kenya if Parliament approves a 6% significant economic presence tax. It's not even the motor vehicle.
What is that? Economic presence tax?
Yeah, significant economic presence tax.
On
gross turnover.
Correct.
For non-resident firms.
This is why I asked yourself, is Samsung a Vietnamese company?
It's a South Korean.
It's a South Korean company. But you see, the point is, Vietnam is encouraging foreign organizations to go and work there. We have the opposite view in Kenya. And that's the reason why Cadbury's left Kenya. That's the reason why, Procter,
Palmolive.
all of these people, they're all leaving Kenya. Why? Because they're the people to be milked. Rather than, look, these are people who provide employment. BAT has got 3 operations in Africa. In South Africa, in Kenya, and also in Nigeria. They've closed their operation, their manufacturing operation in Zambia and Uganda and Rwanda, etc. Why? Because you can carry cigarettes. They're very, very light. Okay, you can go anywhere with cigarettes. They're thinking of closing Kenya. So how do I know this? Well, we were interviewing a person. He said, "Well, I want to make sure I have a job." So the point here, okay, is that we've got to understand. These people. Our view in Kenya is, look, these guys are ripping us off. Unfortunately, John Njiraini, when he was the commissioner for income tax, okay, he said, look, these foreign multinationals are stealing 50 billion shillings a year from Kenya. Now, the only thing is, you make a statement like that. Where are the facts? He doesn't have them, but everyone believes. Yeah, okay, and that's where. You go to people in KRA, they will say, yeah, these people are stealing money from Kenya. But Samsung is encouraged to go to Vietnam, okay? You see, we've got to think, we've got to change our thinking in Kenya. Not everyone is here to rip us off, okay? We've got to be careful because, the agent that you were mentioning about who's messing up Ethiopia is liable to mess us up as well. And very often we talk about the donor community. These are not donors at all. They're living large at our cost. So, but I think at the same time, we've got to be measured in, hey, look, we very often, we base our judgments on very, very superficial things, you see. And we don't actually go and think a little bit more deeply. And
this special economic, whatever it is, tax that they're putting on, it's like it's a medicine that has been brought about by the global tax experts, where you find that companies like Microsoft and Apple and all the rest of it, they went to tax havens to operate from there. And therefore they brought all their income from everywhere into that tax haven and declared their tax at that point. And especially now we've got double taxation agreements. Yeah. Now, if you're operating, if you're doing a global, if you're within the services industries, let's call it, yeah? The internet and all the rest of it. You don't have a presence in Kenya, but you're operating in Kenya. Yeah, so you establish a company for the normal sort of things that are happening here. But all you're doing is you have an online presence that people are using in Kenya. They're doing business in Kenya, and you're getting paid in Ireland because people are paying by credit cards, you name it, what have you, and everything else. So effectively, they cannot tax you here because you're not earning your revenue directly in Kenya because the company is not really domiciled in Kenya. So what this significant economic presence tax thing is that saying because you are operating economically in Kenya and there's a value that your business draws from this country, you pay tax. That is what this is happening. So it's Bolt, it's Uber, it's going to be Airbnb, it's going to be all these digital services that happen that are deriving income from Kenya, but the transactions don't happen within our financial system in Kenya.
But I thought there was a conversation around the global corporation tax, that whether it should be revised from 30 to 25. Is it diametrically different with this?
This is the new fix that has come through around all the companies. Because when you do that one, companies just move to, what do you call it, to more friendly places. Yeah? But here, you are taxed on the basis of the average size of your business in this country.
But to cure that, I thought that's why they wanted the implementation of this global corporation tax. Right?
This is Kenya's interpretation of the global corporation tax.
But I think what is important is to look at the downside of it.
Yeah.
And the narrative you're providing makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing we have when you try to kick in taxation at gross turnover.
Yeah.
It really doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's perhaps something we need to look at. But this will mean there are a lot of young people, as we talk today, in this country. For some reason, they're also benefiting from Uber and Bolt. So if these companies perhaps take the exit they're talking about, then you can see what will happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. And the beauty is they can move to where the taxation is friendly. But the downside, you affect the young people here who are working in this industry. I've never understood this idea of working or taxing gross income. Never understood why. Because I could be having hell of costs, like Kenya Airways. Yeah? If you look at their turnover, it's great, but their costs are so high. So maybe that's something could be worked on.
But you
instead
see,
of looking at the gross turnover. How do we go and tax their profits?
The point is, how many people in government...
And that's your area anyway.
How many people in government have ever worked in business? They have page 167 of their basic economics book, and they don't know how businesses work. I have people, in academia who say, look, I want to be a director of a company. I've got a lot of knowledge. These people are they're bookworms. Okay, they don't know what's going on.
W-A or W-O?
W-O. Okay. They're bookworms. And the point is, in order to be a director of a business, let's face it, you've got to be a person who understands what business is.
Right.
So many boards of directors. I find that people say, "Oh, what a fantastic board of directors." No, it's the people who are running the company. Okay. The managing director and his team, they're the people who make a difference, okay? The board, to my mind, we have so much of this talk about governance and governance. Okay, if I'm corrupt or if I'm ineffective, if you take Mumias Sugar Company, okay, the board of Mumias was, someone said to me, look, they must have known what was going on and they were part of it. But, that company was destroyed by the management, okay? Destroyed. And, so now we are then saying, oh, well, and I had a student, okay, a past student, who actually became the managing director of Sony. He was incredibly honest, this man. And he got malaria on a Tuesday and died on a Saturday. Whoa. Now, malaria, I put in inverted, I put it in inverted commas because I think he was poisoned. He was too honest. People wanted to get their hands in the cookie jar, so they said, look, eliminate this man. And even we had a company secretary who used to work in this particular company here. He was killed in Mumias, okay? Probably because he was honest. I don't know. You know, but we have. The point is, you know, I was asking Patrick. You know, we talk about this thing. We talk about this thing. We talk. How are we going to change Kenya for the better? Because it comes down to every single Tom, Dick, and a Wino, and also every Wanjiku. And, you know, I was listening to a commencement speech last night, okay? And it was a 20-minute speech, but this man was saying, look, you know, his wife is the primary educator of our children. How many women in Kenya realize that? You know, look, the primary educator, this child is going to grow up. I was talking to a man recently, and he actually, you know, the first language he spoke was Italian because his nanny was an Italian. But you see, the point is, how many mothers in Kenya realize, look, I've got a responsibility to imprint ethics into this child. Because if that is not the case, if, for example, a child grows up and a different man is coming to this woman every day, what's that daughter going to do? She's going to do exactly what her mother does. So the point is, you know, we say, oh, education, it's the responsibility of the government. No, it's the responsibility of the father and the mother. Yeah. And if they don't take on that responsibility...
That's very true. Let me comment on the digital tax. As much as I'm not supporting a lot of the other proposals, this one I support. And this is the reason. When you're doing business in New York and you have a business in Nairobi, you're generating funds and you're repatriating all this money. And I'm giving an example of a friend of mine who went into partnership with some guys from Europe in a hotel. It's a resort center. And those guys were paying all the rooms and booking in Europe. They come here, they stay, they leave. None of that money ever gets here. So the partner is like, hey, wait a minute, where is the money? No, he had canceled bookings and all this and all that, because they didn't want the Kenyans to benefit from that. Yeah. Okay, now, if the same thing with Uber, if they're doing their business here, and all that money is being shipped out, and they're not paying for that presence for being here and not being domiciled here. The thing is, if Uber exits, there's be another hailing company that will come and take over the space. The question is...
a Kenyan company which can do that.
Absolutely, and there are many that can be able to do that. So the question is, whether this is the right thing to do is the extent of how much taxation we are looking at. But it's right to tax.
But you're right, Prof. What's happening? Yeah. There's a lot of other bad things, but there's something good here, but you are not getting it and explained it well.
Yes.
Because like what you have explained, it makes a lot of sense, and Kenyans would understand that. Yeah. But I think what we need to, I think the Treasury has a responsibility of informing Kenyans what this specifically means.
Explain what this is.
This one means this. Exactly. This one means that. Yes. This one means that. Yeah. And we'll be comfortable. Yeah. And I like the example he has given is fantastic. Guys book there. Here, you don't get it.
But that was the whole import of this, is around the fact that you don't actually, the economic activity doesn't happen here, although the earnings happen here and they're shipped out.
They're shipped out.
So there's got to be a way of capturing the tax that is due on the fact that people here are paying for a service.
That's why they were actually saying and having it at 25%.
That's why
the global corporation tax, so that we don't have vacillations of tax. This country is having 25%, another country is having 30%. All this now will come to 40%.
That was the intention, but I think that
until they reach there, then each country has to figure out how do you capture this.
How do you capture it? Yeah, that was the problem.
They have to figure out. This one I have no problem with.
But
you see, we don't necessarily oppose taxation. What I don't like is punitive taxation.
Right.
Okay? Don't tax me to a point where I cannot function. Don't tax me at the 30% you do your pay. Then I come and tax you about 20 or 30 times on everything you're consuming, where I come to the bank and I want to write you a check. You want to charge me for writing a check? Where I want to come and withdraw money, you want to charge me for withdrawing the same money that you tax 30%? Where you, water. For example, I saw one lady yesterday that was saying you're taxing the water that's in this bottle, and you're also taxing the bottle that I'm drinking the water. And the lady was like, come on, man, you've already taxed me enough. These are natural resources that are available for us to consume. Don't tax everything that you see.
And there is a very long narrative being given out there, and I think we have a responsibility and a duty as Kenyans to make it clear. You know, when McPhee steps there and starts saying, France, they pay 45%, US, you pay that, I think that's the wrong narrative. And we have said in this forum, we all want to pay taxes. Nobody is running away.
I don't want to pay taxes.
Fair enough, go to Uganda. But we all want to pay taxes by God's grace. Let's see what that taxation is doing.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
Exactly.
If I was in France today and I'm charged 45, I have said to
you can
facility.
See where the money
the roads are okay.
Yeah.
I have a young fella. He couldn't come to class because where he lives to the main road is full of potholes. So he doesn't call his car a car, he calls it a locomotive.
Yes.
His locomotive could not go to the main road. So he missed everything. You can guess where he comes from.
Now that you've mentioned, something I wanted to mention before you move to the next one. I saw a president saying we need to move from 14 to 22% on the revenue, the ratio that's coming from taxation. There is no problem with that aspiration.
Right.
Except it should not be in absolute terms. It should be in relative terms. How many people are participating in the 14% vis-a-vis the entire collection that we are doing?
Right.
If it's only 13% of the population that producing the 13 or 14%, then we have a problem. And that's why the issue of the bottom-up, when we wrote the model bottom-up, the whole idea was to bring people from the bottom to the middle, so we expand the tax base. And therefore, you are talking about a percentage in relative terms as to the number of people that are participating, but not in absolute terms where you have we have a finite number of individuals. You're going to kill them. You're going to kill them.
But
so the whole idea is not bad.
So, of course, there has been also this story about Mogoka and the Miran as well. And I'm looking at Prof because we have also now the brewers.
Am I a consumer of those products?
Prof, because I know also you love your drink as well. And
I do indeed.
There is the ABV. That's now the alcohol content also will determine the rate of taxation.
Oh, no.
On your bottle that you're taking. So the more the content, the higher the tax. I don't know if you can, because we've seen also some of the brewers are complaining about this at the end of the day. They call it is it alcohol ABV? I forget the.
Yeah, it's that. It's the tax. If the alcohol percentage is higher, you will then pay a higher tax. And I'm all for that, I must say. I don't know whether you're into this changa or, you know.
He will opt for changa now.
I'm headed there.
But now the Jamison for him.
I think it's interesting because somebody's even pushed it to the narrative that you're even going to tax people for their conjugal and conjugal duties. With your camera there. You were there last night.
I think the KRX bandit cameras now.
I think one of the things, the downside, and I think we need to be very careful how a balance here. What alternative will people have? And probably what we have been having central problem. Even right now, I think in terms of taxation, it's very different when you're taking whiskeys and beers. Yeah, there is. But those are areas, if you read it as a government, you want to, because they are priced inelastic. But when you're looking at elastic goods, then you need to be extremely careful in terms of taxation. To me, some of the alcohols to some extent are luxury goods. When somebody goes there and gets King George.
Absolutely.
Yes, and it's costing a tot, I don't know how much it's costing a tot. A whole bottle is 150,000. Those are those are price inelastic.
And people can just knock it back in one sitting.
Yeah,
King
absolutely.
George goes down.
150,000. The man goes down as well.
ABV is alcohol by volume, eh?
Yeah, alcohol by volume is that's what I was asking.
That's the ABV,
alcohol
yeah?
by volume.
By volume.
Okay.
When you look at tax, I mean, and talking about this, I just quickly looked up the highest tax countries in the world, and number one is Cote d'Ivoire. So at about 62%.
62%.
Yeah, and then you get to Finland, Denmark, Norway, the one that you normally know. Yeah,
Right.
And the highest tax country in the world, you don't see the services at all.
No.
Zero. Yeah. A lot of it, I think it must be all going to Yamoussoukro. And then you look at Denmark.
I think you need to go back to Malaysia.
and then you look at Denmark, Finland, and all the rest of it. You actually see the value of service.
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct.
And one of the stories I always tell about this is my experience with a driver, a taxi driver, who was able to say that, actually tell us on the journey that I can tell you that we argued about the investment in our local area of the tax money that was coming in. They were actually involved in the decision about how the tax that was given to their local county, their county government, whatever it is, or the local government, yeah, was going to be spent on the road. Now that is where transparency in terms of the expenditure of tax is visible. When just a citizen can tell you that they made a decision about how their tax was spent, right? How far are we from that here? Where even CDF, which is supposed to be a constituency development fund, that local people have no say on the CDF. Yeah? So the issue of increasing taxation in this country and people accepting it, we are very, very far from there.
But
your
numbers are correct. If you look at those Scandinavians and you look at the HDI, Human Development Index, you look at happiness, you look at level of corruption, they are all good, despite the high taxation they have. So people being the benefit, and people are willing. In the US, if you have been there, the Internal Revenue Authority, people always want to meet it because you can see the benefits. Yeah. But we want to pay taxes, but for heaven's sake. Like there's a section, I don't know whether you use it, I don't think you use it. There's a section between Village Market and Australian High Commission.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. As you're going down there.
Oh my God. You better be awake, not drunk.
Yes.
Otherwise you leave the tires of your car on the road.
You better have King
And I'm
George.
not talking,
King George not in your tummy.
I'm not King George. Rather have one glass of Moratina and I'll be okay.
All right, guys. In other news, Kenya's private sector experienced a notable upswing last month as falling cost burdens and rising new business contributed to a solid expansion in activity in the economy. The upturn in the activity was the sharpest recorded in 20 months, as was input buying growth. These levels of activities saw the Stanbic Bank Kenya Purchasing Managers Index, that is PMI, climb to 51.8 from 50.1 in April, marking the most rapid expansion since January 2023. The PMI is a gauge for economic health in the private sector, reading above 50 signal growth, while those below point of that to contraction. Reductions in fuel prices and import cost led to a further drop in overall input prices in May after the first decrease in nearly 4 years during April. Selling prices started to rise again, albeit slowly. Noted economist, of course, Christopher Legislo of Stanbic Bank. He attributed this growth to reduced fuel prices and a favorable shilling exchange rate, which led to cheaper imports. The strengthening of private sector conditions was also largely due to a turnaround in inflationary pressures at Kenyan companies. Job creation continued for a fifth successive month amid larger workloads and prospects of new businesses. Firm also purchased larger quantities, raising their inventory levels and improving their buffers. The PMI reports says, all right, during the period under review, the services, that is manufacturing, wholesale and retail sectors, saw a rise in output, contrasting with the agriculture and construction sectors, which suffered due to heavy rainfall and flooding. Despite these setbacks, the overall economic outlook remains positive. The Kenyan shilling has shown also remarkable resilience, trading at approximately 131.7 to the dollar, a 20% appreciation from earlier in the year. This strength has contributed to a decrease in input prices for the second consecutive month, easing inflationary pressures that peaked in the late 2023. The government has developed a human resource information system to manage civil servants. The system, developed with assistance from the World Bank, will have a payroll module that will manage salaries. Kenya has a problem of ghost workers, paid hundreds of millions of shillings, thereby inflating the wage bill. Now, according to the Public Service PS, Amos Gathesha, this payroll system is going to carry everybody who is in the public service, that is, in the mainstream civil service, the county governments, state-owned enterprises, among others. He spoke on the sidelines of the second HR Summit for directors and deputy directors from ministries and departments in the public service in Mombasa. The Kenyan Human Resource Information System is a web-based system developed to manage the human resource function in the public sector, including the payroll. PS Gathesha said the new system will address the problem of ghost workers. And the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Kenya, the CBK, has held the central bank rate steady at 13%, a decision influenced by a mix of global and domestic factors. According to Governor Kamau Thuge, the global economy continued to recover, bolstered by strong growth in the United States and resilience in emerging markets, particularly India, noting that geopolitics, tensions, and the prospects of prolonged high interest rates pose significant threats to the growth. While global inflation has moderated, it remains stubborn in advanced economies, he said. Domestically, Thuge said Kenya's inflation rate has remained stable, registering 5.1% in May 2024 compared to 5% in April. The stability is within the target range, with the food inflation at 6.2% due to supply disruptions from heavy rains and flooding. However, prices of non-vegetable foods items like maize, sugar, and wheat flour have declined due to improved supply. Fuel inflation also saw a decrease, reflecting lower palm prices and electricity costs. The MPC concluded that the current monetary policy stance will ensure that overall inflation remains stable around the mid of the target range in the near term, while ensuring continued stability in the exchange rate. All right, and retired public servants inched closer to getting a review of their pensions after a bill proposing to peg their annuity on inflation adjustment was brought to the National Assembly. The bill seeks to amend the Pension Act to include an automatic cost of living in adjustments to the pensions earned by all retired public servants. The Kasim Tandaza-sponsored bill further seeks to provide for the use of the most current salary applicable to a job group as a basis for the calculation of a pension payable to the public servants who is retired in the job group or its equivalent. If implemented, the automatic cost of living adjustments shall be calculated based on an increase in the consumer price index within 12 months ending on June 30th in each financial year. Well, to some development at the Standard Group PLC, Marion Gathoga Mwangi has been appointed as the new Group Chief Executive Officer. The appointment was announced by the Chairman of the Board of Directors, Dr. Julius Kipngetich. Gathoga Mwangi is a senior executive who has worked in various senior positions in various companies for at least 26 years. She takes over from Joe Munene, who has been serving in acting capacity. Prior to her appointment, she worked in senior leadership positions, including being the country director at Cadbury Kenya and East Africa Limited, general manager at Unga Kenya Limited, and country director, that is Palamart Botswana Proprietary Limited company in Gaborone, among others. She is set to officially join the group on the 15th July 2024. Right, we just want to maybe just get some also views from you, those particular stories. I think it's good to be in the civil servant and retire in the civil servants, because even now the cost of inflation will be adjusted on your pension. I was just looking at that, I was saying, hey, Professor Gituro Wanaina,
I just wanted to
he should be a happy man, because University of Nairobi as well has been ranked, I think, he got some good rankings. In 1,000, the world ranking, it's standing at 1,000?
Yeah, something like that, which is great. But it's always a very skewed kind of, in the sense that it's more the medics. Our medics are extremely good in research.
Or the medics?
Yeah, and they actually bring that, even like say to the top 1,000 higher learning institution.
Yes.
They do a lot of research, actually, and scientists, yeah. But that's good and it's positive in a way. I hope we can have this internal language which have been happening with the council, the CEO. But I just wanted to spread the PMI.
How come you're not involved in these internal wrangles? Because you just keep a low profile, do you?
A low profile, but beyond those petty kind of things.
Okay.
No, but
no.
But Prof, a person of your intellectual provenance, especially also in the corporate governance, yeah, this is where now it should be fully applied, and you sit aside with the board and tell them, this is what the Mwongozo Code says.
There's something, and I remember Ray Biwott said when the bull of the Auckland. At times you find the wall there. If you try to go through the wall, where do you utaumia?
Oh, you mean Biwott used to have some wisdom?
Yeah, kind of. Well, I don't know what happened in But you're right. You're right, and it's the same thing they're talking about this government. You know, we can see what's wrong, but that will not stop us saying what needs to be done. But I just wanted to say that PMI is a very good indicator, particularly when you look at manufacturing. Manufacturing is a very key driver in any economy, and you can see how it was actually Jubilee government, the big four. It was among the big four. The current one, you can see, is there. Most countries, you look at Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia. Malaysia is almost doing 20% or 22% of what is coming from manufacturing. We are doing precisely 7.2. Yeah, in 2023. And in this country, in May, it was about 50.2 PMI. 50 is, you're not moving anywhere or down. But if you do more than 50%, then it indicates you are growing. If you go below 50%, there's contraction. So it's also a very good indicator. And those are the pointers. When you get an index, it's a combination of many things. You look at consumer price index. It tells you the basket of goods which everybody is behaving. When you look at NIC, it tells you how the market is behaving. When you get the PMI, it's an index.
The HDI.
The HDI. So it brings out that to get an average of 50.2, it says you can give all those, the inflation we have contained, the Kenya shilling we have not contained, or whatever, but it tells you at the bottom of the day, there's not much happening in manufacturing in this country. That's what the PMI is saying. And that's something perhaps, and I like your, those guys, when they sit in Treasury, they're brilliant young men and women.
They're brilliant.
They're brilliant.
At home, they agonize when they go.
Urban Mwendwa, you listen to them. You listened to him yesterday. He talked too much, but they have a brain.
Ati?
But you see, that's now you get, you're somewhere, you're told, no, that's not the way we want to go. And at times it's good to say, I'm quitting.
Yeah. Let me. I don't know.
I want to pick
yes.
up on this
On the
pension.
PMI, yes. Oh,
The pension,
yeah.
yes.
But let's finish the PMI because that's another. Then you go to
No,
the
I
pension.
think we're done with the PMI because because of time as well, so that we can pick.
Yeah.
We have only 5 minutes, so that we
I wanna
can touch on the.
very quickly on the PMI.
I wish you could talk about the MPC, right? Because maybe this will be a conflict of interest.
It's tied to what you're looking at.
He's in that board. Is in that.
No, it's okay. We retain 13%, which is fine.
But why did we rise to 13% from 8?
But that's a story for another day.
That's a long discussion.
That's a long discussion. Another Thursday. But on the issue of PMI, it's okay. It also depends on who you are surveying.
Surveying, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the next statement now from Central Bank, in terms of the impact of the stabilized exchange rate, non-vegetable food supplies. We are talking about the commodities we have imported, which impacts our PMI.
Yeah.
And therefore, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't mean we are improving.
No.
We're just buying more from other folks because the shilling is a little bit stronger than it was before. So we cannot take an index in the absence of the ecosystem around the index and say we are doing well.
I take you on board.
Yeah.
It's what I'm saying.
So
we are saying we are doing well.
This is a wrong projection.
No, it's okay.
It's got to be moderated by reality.
By reality.
What is that index capturing?
What is that index? Is it we are looking at? If you are looking at guys who are importing, they're importing maize and sugar and all these other things,
Doesn't
then
say
we are
anything.
not doing well. That's what I'm saying. But you're saying the PMI is telling us, okay, there's a lot of activity, we are doing blah, 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 blah. But then, what is it that you bought?
Yeah.
What is it that you bought?
And from where?
And from where? That answered the economic question that
Absolutely.
we're asking ourselves.
Porsche motor cars.
Yeah.
All right, but talk about the pension because
I want to talk about the pension and this issue that is going into Parliament now is going to hit us as taxpayers.
They better be happy. They better be careful.
Because that is only applicable if you got a defined benefit.
Yep.
Right?
So DB.
And everybody in the world has gone to DC.
Yeah.
Now, if you got a defined benefit, you can apply this 7%, whatever it is that they want to put in, and that means that your burden, your pension burden, as the supplier of pension, because it's the government has got a big input into that pension basket, is going to grow. And that is why you find countries are increasing the retirement age because they can't afford.
They can
pension.
afford, yes.
Yeah. So this is a dangerous direction that this thing is taking.
Dangerous,
Very dangerous.
And the
For
legacy
us,
costs that you're putting now on operations. To
in that
fund
place.
all these people who have retired, when you peg it to inflation, becomes very,
You're
very
talking
difficult.
the chair of the central bank pension fund.
It's going to be
It
whatever.
becomes
Yeah.
very difficult. Yeah.
No, I mean,
so that includes also your civil servant.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a beneficiary of a direct of a defined benefit, right? And we've got that already. And I mean, I'm enjoying life. I don't need to work.
Well, we see that from your shirt.
It clearly shows.
Yeah, and we get an average of 7 to 8% increment automatically every year, and it's been going on for the last 15 years or so. Yeah, so it's great for those who are on one side.
But the burden,
but the funding, of that
becomes a problem.
Right?
You know what
So even the
Patrick did say?
DPs, yeah.
There's a song in Kikuyu. It's being called Maisha no Maya. Means hakuna maisha ingine. Enjoy, Patrick. Enjoy what you have been doing.
Yeah, I thought you
So
sang.
the government
Yes.
needs to change to a DC.
Yeah.
It needs to change to a DC at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very difficult decision.
Yeah.
It may take about 8 to 10 years, 15 years for the shift to change, but somebody has to bite the bullet now. Otherwise, we are just setting ourselves up as a country for another big burden that has got to be paid by the taxpayer.
And that's why educating our legislatures on the ecosystem around the decisions
If they are educatable.
is very, very important.
If they are educatable.
Makfi, maybe your last comment as well as we're winding up.
No, what I feel is the big stress has got to be saving, but not just simply saying that, and we've got to judge people from their actions, but we've got to have people who are responsible in government. There's almost $1 trillion shillings which has not been paid to businesses right across the whole spectrum in Kenya, okay, which the government has not yet paid, and it's putting those businesses into bankruptcy. So this is where we have to have economic, financial responsibility. If we don't do that, we're going to end up like Haiti, or as the Americans would say, Haiti, or whatever they call it.
All right. Guys, I really appreciate it. We have to wind up here. Thank you so very much for your valued company. I thought at some point Professor Geturo Wanaina will not, you will have sung that song in Kikuyu.
In full, next time.
In full. But I thought you will have sung Ne Kenya Jero. Ne Kenya Jero. It's a new Kenya. It's a new Kenya that we're in. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your input this morning. We'll leave you with the words of Peter Drucker here that he says, just to remind you, the strategy, moderator may just pick it up. Strategy is a commodity. Execution is an art. Strategy is a commodity. Execution is an art. We should learn from Singapore and Malaysia. Right? That is the father of management, Peter Drucker. We thank you very much for your valued company. Let's see you next week on Sokoni when we continue with a pace with the conversation. Thank you.